Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome everyone to the findyourleadershipconfidence.com. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and change your business and your life. So today I have with me Sheila Cosgrove, and let me tell you about Sheila. Sheila is a seasoned executive leadership and high performance coach with over 2 decades of experience helping professionals and organizations navigate change, grow their influence, and achieve certain results that will matter. With a background that spans corporate leadership, consulting, and talent development, Sheila brings a rare blend of strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and practical insight to every conversation. She is a creator of Career Success Accelerator Method, a signature framework designed to help executive women gain clarity, elevate visibility, grow their influence, and grounded approach. She is helping you get out of burning out and playing small. She holds certifications in coaching, project management, human resources, and when she is not advising clients or speaking on stage, you'll find her writing, mentoring, or championing more equitable, human-centered workplaces. We're going to talk about the art of the pivot, reclaiming agency in your career without starting over. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Sheila Cosgrove. I always start out with 2 easy questions. The first is, what part of the country do you live in? Where do you call home?
I live in South Carolina.
Oh, nice.
And not far from the beach. So very lucky to be in this beautiful area, the Low Country.
I'm going to Hilton Head next month, so looking forward to beach time.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah. And share a bit about your journey. We gave all the accolades of what you are today and the great credibility you have to talk on this subject. But I love for you always to share the journey so that people see that it isn't a straight line, that, there are times where you had to pivot and those moments that really defined who you are and why you do what you do.
So yes, I've made a few pivots myself in my career, but I started out many years ago working in hospitality and travel and tourism. And I started working in the field, and then I worked for global teams and the corporate office for a large global hospitality company. And I, just kind of climbed the corporate ladder, and I learned a lot about corporate culture and how to kind of position yourself for promotion and visibility. So I've lived a lot of what my clients have lived through, are living through. And I guess it was about 2018, so 7 years ago now, I went through a job elimination, not unlike a lot of my clients, not unlike many people. I think the statistics are about 40% of people go through a job elimination or a layoff, during their career. So it really gave me an opportunity to think about, what is it do I really want to contribute? What do I want to spend the rest of my career doing? And I had always kind of gravitated towards leadership development and being a mentor. And I was lucky to be able to create a number of mentoring and programs within the corporate environment that I worked in. So I knew that it was really something that I was really passionate about, and that I felt like I could be able to serve others and kind of bring all my experience to bear. So I did some consulting work as well. So I've seen different sides. I've been on the client side and been on the consultant side. So I've been able to see and work with a lot of people kind of across the leadership levels, if you will. So that's where I am here today. So I established my coaching firm about 8 years ago. So, and I've been just going since then.
Awesome. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions women have about visibility and self-promotion? And how do you help them shift that mindset?
So a lot of my women that I work with, to your point, visibility is something that they feel like if it's something they are really looking at, or if they are focusing on, it makes them seem like they're bragging or they're self-promoting, but in a negative way. And what we really do is we take a look at all of the successes that they had in their career, all of the contributions that they've made, and all the value that they brought to their organization, to their team. And we start to really talk about it. What was it that happened? How did you contribute? What was the value that you brought? So that they can start to feel comfortable about actually talking about themselves and talking about the contributions that they've made. And over time, it becomes a little easier. And they get to a point where they can say it and it feels natural to them, or they can talk about their contributions and it feels natural to them. And we do a lot of putting together some things that they can say in certain situations, depending upon what type of leaders they're talking to about what it is they contribute. So it takes some time. It takes some kind of diving into all of those things that they have done, because they have so many wonderful contributions that they've made, and they just really need to talk about it. And they start to feel like, maybe this is not, this, I'm not bragging, or I'm not, self-promoting in a negative way. They feel like, I need to talk about these things so people know what I bring.
Right. So you've held, as I mentioned in your bio, several different prominent roles in leadership. How have those perspectives really shaped how you can help and advise women today?
So with my corporate background, as well as my consulting career and now my coaching career, I have seen and connected with people at all levels of an organization. And I have seen what they're looking for, what their priorities are. And it helps when I can share that and also help my clients work through the communications with different levels of the organization, because the communication is different, obviously, depending upon who you're talking to. Right. And communication is really key to be able to do. So I've taken, kind of up breadth, depth of experience, and then it helps me to really understand where my clients are, what they're dealing with, and also some strategies that they can use to kind of navigate through all of that.
So what would be some early signs that a woman in leadership needs a career change, even if everything looks fine on the surface?
Right. Most of the time, they're being passed over for promotion. They're maybe not being given the opportunity to lead really high visibility projects, as an example. They're basically feeling kind of overlooked, and unmotivated. And typically that's the time where they have to make a change. And it doesn't have to be, I have to make a complete, career pivot and I have to go into a different industry or a different role altogether. It might just be, being more comfortable talking about themselves and promoting their value. It might just mean taking a look at their brand and how they're showing up and what, how that's perceived by other people. So that's something that we can work on too. But typically when they find that, they've been going after promotion and it hasn't really worked out over a period of time, or they feel like they're not getting those opportunities to really contribute even more, that's typically the time they need to take a look at what needs to change.
Yeah. So how can executive women create more influence without being performance or over extending themselves in people pleasing roles, which we tend to do.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge for all of us. But a lot of times it comes down to communication and follow through.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned before, when you're dealing with or when you're working with people at different levels, you need to know how to best communicate with them and understand what their priorities are and be able to speak to them. In addition, you need to do what you say you're going to do. Right? You need to follow through with the things that you said you were going to follow through with. And when people know that they can trust you to do that, that's a really influential position to be in. And also being able to, if you can articulate what it is they need or what it is you're contributing or what is the issue and potentially the solutions, when you can really communicate that strongly, that goes a really long way in helping women build influence. So that's a lot of the things that we work on together through coaching.
Very good. So, your career success accelerator method has 4 pillars: strategy, visibility, influence, and balance. Which one do women leaders struggle the most with and why?
Wow, there's two that stand out, both visibility and balance.
Yeah.
And we talked about visibility a little bit already, but I'd have to say the prize goes to balance. I think a lot of times we just don't take the time to really take care of ourselves, and it's beyond just kind of taking a day off, which is great, or going on vacation, also very important, recharging your batteries and kind of resetting. But it's also about how are you setting boundaries on a daily basis, and how are you doing that consistently so that you stay away from or you reduce the potential for burnout in the way that you're working or through your work. So I would say balance is probably the toughest one, but when we work together and we really get that going and we get them to a point where they have set those boundaries and they're contributing great work, but they're also taking care of themselves, that's they're unstoppable. So that, I think, is probably not the most important one or the toughest one, but I think it is the toughest one that we work through, because we're all kind of taught to be the people pleasers, be the people who are taking care of everything. And we can still do that, but also have those boundaries and be able to have the balance.
I think the interesting thing is that I've seen over 40 years in corporate business, that I think women articulate that once they figured out that they're burnout or they're not in balance. And I don't even think it's really possible to be in balance. I think
Totally.
it's really
Yeah.
prioritization, knowing what is the main thing and sticking with that. But I think oftentimes men, and probably it leads to divorce, but I think oftentimes men are struggling the same ways, and women are trying to lead, or are led by example, and they're trying to be in that man's seat. So
Mm.
therefore, they're trying to do all that the man is doing. And that leads to a lack of balance, a burnout of just never stopping and taking care of yourself. And I think it's something that all leaders need to understand and use their emotional intelligence and empathy to really discuss the fact that uh, you you can't do it all,
Mhm.
and that what is the main thing that you have to get done, what is the priority, and what are things that could be delegated or or wait.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And that's something that we talk through as we look at the things like balance. And to your point, certainly on a daily basis, balance is not always possible.
No.
But if they can kind of take a look across the spectrum, every week or every month, what does that look like? Because there will be days where it is all hands on deck and you have to be there late, or you have to be there early, or you have to be contributing, or there's some type of crisis that you have to lean into, or your team just needs you to be there. And those things will happen. But if they can kind of take a look at across that spectrum of time and try to balance across a longer time period, right? So it doesn't always happen. It doesn't always happen on a daily, definitely on a daily, but sometimes not even on a weekly basis either. So, but if they just kind of are really thoughtful about just in general on, on the aggregate kind of finding that balance and finding ways to delegate and finding ways to not have to be there all the time or not have to be on all the time. But you're right, it's typical of both women and men as well. So
learning how to say that two-letter word.
That's right. Learning how to say no. For sure.
Not always easy for some, right?
Yeah.
So time is really flying by here, but you work with women who are successful but stuck. It's funny because I just listened to a Darren Hardy episode today, and he talked about stuck and saying that everybody gets stuck. It's just, do you get out of stuck? So what does stuck actually look like at the executive level, and why is it hard to identify?
It typically looks like you don't have that excitement or motivation anymore about the work that you're doing. And I'm a big proponent of, I don't think you should do the same thing forever, right? You should have certain pivots in your career, and you can be many different things, over the course of a 30 or 40-year career. But a lot of my clients are just feeling like, they come to me with the question, is this all there is? Right? What else is out there for me? So, and they can't really see, what could potentially be out there for them because they're in it. It's very, very personal to them. So, but most of the time they're starting to ask themselves, about what else is there? What more do I want to do with the time that I have left, whether it's 20 years or 30 years or 10 years or 5 years, whatever the case may be. And they're just looking for a way to make a greater impact. And typically as those feelings start to come to the forefront, that's usually a sign that maybe, you're stuck where you are, and it's time to really be thoughtful and be intentional about what's next, what that looks like, what that can look like, because there's lots of different options out there.
I remember when I was just starting in management, and one of my mentors said, if it's no longer fun, it's time to move on. And in corporate world, like I had probably 8 or 9 jobs in the 40 years that I was in corporate. But so you don't have to have the same job, but it's that fear of like, oh God, what is that next job? Is it going to be as good as this? It's going to be worse than this. And, and sometimes we just go after that pay or trying to increase our pay, not thinking, well, maybe there's a lateral move that actually would be better for me, create a new skill set that would make me eventually be able to get more money.
Yep. And a lot of times it is those lateral moves that make the difference, because you're able to just kind of expand your knowledge a little bit more and get to see what else, is there. And it doesn't always have to be a step up necessarily, but that lateral move can make a big difference as well. And sometimes it's about, looking for your next opportunity elsewhere, but knowing that you can come back to where you were at a higher level because you've gotten that additional experience.
Exactly.
Right? So that's something that's very common, and always I encourage my clients to do is to look at those types of opportunities as well.
Yeah. I remember the one company I was with, they actually didn't discourage if somebody said, well, I see this opportunity at another company that I think I want. And they always kept the door open for you to come back, because they recognize that that other company is going to give you different perspective, different skills. And perhaps that could help this company grow more. Not every company thinks that way. You know, when you leave to go somewhere else, they're like, shut the door, lock the door, don't ever come back. But
That's true. It is. The more experience you can gain, and the different perspective, to your point about, that how other companies operate potentially, and some of the things that work really well that you can bring back if you choose to do so. So yeah, it's a really good point.
Well, the last question I have is, how do you help clients align their personal values with organizational goals, especially when the two seem to be in tension? And I think this is really important, you know, for owners of businesses and entrepreneurs to really know what their values are.
Be able to articulate them as well, be able to model them additionally. So not just talk about it, but actually, walk the walk or walk the talk or whatever the case is. But so the first thing, really, when I have someone whose values seem to be at odds with the organization that they're with, I really talk about whether or not that's the right place for them. And I don't encourage everyone to just quit or make a change, because sometimes that's not practical. For financial considerations, they can't just, decide they're going to leave the job because it just doesn't fit their values. But in a lot of cases, when we talk about that in the beginning, we say, maybe this isn't the right place for you, but let's see what you can do in the short term. And what can you control? What's in your control that can make that better for you?
Right.
So there will almost certainly be a time in everyone's career where they're working somewhere that they feel like their values are at odds, with the organization, which is unfortunate. People are much more aware of it now, and much more unwilling really to stay in those types of places for the long term. But when they have to, and if they are not really ready, to make that change, then I say to them, again, look around and look at your own team, look at your own department or your own function, and what are some things that you can control in that area, as it relates to values, that can make it better for you, at least in the short term. So that's a lot of what we talk about when those values seem to be at odds.
So, and I think that's, again, it goes back to, it could be scary. It could be, take a little bit of courage, but I think courage brings confidence. And it also comes back to the communication piece. Are you talking to those that are creating that tension? Are you confident enough to at least express that? Or, if you just leave and don't share why, that doesn't help the next person in the seat that takes over yours, right?
Absolutely. That's an excellent point. And we look at what they can change, what they can control. And sometimes they do have that, they can speak to, people at different levels, and they do have that opportunity to do so. So if they can be part of the change, that's always a great place to be. So yeah, for sure. That's a great point.
Yeah. Well, the time has flown by, and I think that we could probably chat on this for a lot longer, but I do want to share your contact information that for those that are interested in connecting with you. As always, you can go to my YouTube channel to be able to gather all of this information. If you haven't already done so, please do subscribe. You can also go to findyourleadershipconfidence.com, my website, to be able to, again, get all of this. So the website is go.sheilacosgrove.com and /strategy call to be able to have a call with her. On Facebook, you can go to Sheila Cosgrove Coaching. And LinkedIn is Sheila Cosgrove, and Instagram is Career Coach Sheila. I'm going to turn it over to Sheila. She's going to talk to you about her coaching program, as well as what she puts out on her website, as well as her social media. So Sheila, it's all yours.
Or I'm always, not always posting, but I do tend to put a fair amount of content out on social media. And so if they follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram, I'm usually talking about visibility and influence and balance, as well as other things that, leaders need to be able to work on or have to work on. So things like negotiation, things like, how not to burn out, those types of things. So I'm always putting out a lot of content in that way. And also I do have a case study that's available that talks about how to accelerate your next, accelerate your career and also kind of fast track, your next promotion. I do have a career change guide as well that I offer to people who follow me on the social media channels that they can kind of take a look at and start to make those changes and start to take those steps. So you can usually find me on LinkedIn and Instagram most of the time.
Awesome. Sheila, thank you so much for spending some time having a great conversation on the art of the pivot. And hopefully people out there that are maybe sitting on the edge thinking, should I? Maybe this is going to give them a little bit more guidance. Food for thought.
It was
as
great
always.
To be here.
As always, want to thank you for being a great guest.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And, I always end by reminding you that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.